It'll go Phil, then
John.
okay, all yours. Let him know when to talk. He says so. Greetings and welcome to the 2022 Candidate Forum for the Milltown Borough Council races. This is being recorded in the council chambers on the evening of September 28th, 2022. My name is Frederick Kamen, and I will be serving as the moderator for these proceedings. I'm a 30-plus year veteran reporter and editor, having worked for such local publications as the Home News Tribune, the Star Ledger, and the New York Times. This is the 5th Milltown Candidates Forum I have conducted. In accordance with the policies and procedures of this forum, I do not live in Milltown, I have no political ties to Milltown, and I have no dealings with any of the candidates. The format for this forum is as follows. First, I shall read the candidates' credential statements that were submitted by deadline. There will be a 3-minute opening statement then from each candidate. Next, reporter questions will be asked, and then previously submitted public questions will follow. Following a 5-minute break, each candidate shall give a 3-minute closing statement. Wishing each candidate the best of luck, let us begin. We start with the candidates' bios. And I will read Phil Zambrano's submitted bio first. Phil Zambrano Jr. has lived in Milltown for 17 years with his wife and 2 daughters, aged 25 and 21. Phil was a member of the Milltown Board of Education for 5 years and chaired the Board of Education's Finance and Facilities Committee for 3 consecutive years. Phil was elected to the Milltown Borough Council in November of 2009 and has chaired the Finance, Planning, and Administration Committee for the last 3 years. Phil is a senior manager, business finance for Sampled, which is a global leader in biobanking, bioprocessing, and analytics, which has corporate headquarters in Piscataway, New Jersey. Prior to joining Sampled in August 2020, Phil held several key finance positions, for the Rutgers Cell and DNA Repository, the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs, and School of Social Work departments at Rutgers University. Phil earned a degree in finance from Baruch College, City University of New York, and prior to joining Rutgers, spent 10 years working at several startup companies in the media, college sports, and Sirius radio spaces, where he served as the financial steward for those operations. The other biography that I shall read is as follows. Patricia Pat Payne, Milltown resident for 23 years, and grew up in Edison, so my Middlesex County roots are solid. I'm a single parent with 2 adult sons, both success stories of the Milltown and Spotswood public school systems. My oldest, Daniel Newton, has a BA from Rutgers University and a master's in global sports business, and worked for a sports marketing firm affiliated with Rutgers. And my youngest, Thomas Newton, graduated with his BS from Rutgers University in May and is just starting his PhD program in structured biology at Columbia University. Both of my boys benefited from township sports programs like Little League and tennis clinics, and they participated in cultural offerings and special town events growing up. We visited the Milltown Public Library regularly, when they were little. Dan served as a Milltown Borough pool manager for many years, and Tom worked at Albert Avenue Camp for many summers. Served 2 3-year terms on the Milltown Board of Education. I served on many committees, including finance negotiations, and served as the liaison to the Spotswood Board of Education. Co-founder and co-president of the Milltown Education Foundation, served on the Milltown Municipal Alliance. Employed full-time as a tenured full professor at Middlesex County College for the last 33 years, I teach constitutional law and criminal justice. I'm also the faculty union president of Local 1940 AFT, and last year was re-elected to my 11th consecutive term. I'm the chief negotiator at contract negotiations and have experience handling grievances, arbitration hearings, and maintain an active union office that serves 140 full-time faculty members. I work collaboratively with a union executive council, a negotiation team, grievance team, and communications team. AS degree from Middlesex County College, a BS degree from New Jersey City University, and a JD degree from Ohio Northern University. Although I'm a licensed attorney for the state of New Jersey, I am retired status and do not actively practice law. I'm interested in increasing sustainable energy routes and opportunities for township residents and local businesses. I'd like to see more comprehensive messaging on social media by the Borough of Milltown, so we are inclusive as well as transparent in our communications with the public. I think it's important to maintain an alignment with the mission of the Milltown Board of Education to ensure a quality education that school budgets don't overtax our citizens. That is the end of the statements that were submitted. Next, 3-minute opening statements from each candidate. The order of this was determined by flipping a coin, and Phil Zambrano will go first.
Thank you, Fred. Good evening, friends and neighbors who are here tonight in person at Borough Hall or who are watching at home on Channel 15 or on YouTube. 3 years ago, I sat up here and stated that it was time for new leadership. My position back then was that only with new leadership would the issues of accountability, communication, transparency be resolved. I believe that I was elected as a councilman because residents were ready for a fresh set of ideas and because they had faith that I could and would get things done. I was sworn in early January of 2020 and went to work and have not stopped working since then. When I took office, I didn't walk into a problem-free situation. There were some issues with financial and operating perspectives at that time. The borough's financial audit was about 1.5 years behind, and the borough was coming off, or I should say the residents were coming off one of the highest increases in borough history. We all know that Milltown does not have as many ratables as our neighbors in nearby communities, and so as a result, Milltown must be smart with their financial commitments and their decisions. In simple terms, if there's a shortfall in the Milltown Borough budget, any financial commitments must be borne by the residents of the town. Then in March 2020, this thing called COVID-19 happened. The next thing that you know, council members couldn't meet in person, weren't able to hold open public meetings, and if we met in person, which was rare, we had to wear masks and follow social distancing protocols. We had, like everyone else, had to establish a new way of doing business. At that time, I didn't know what financial hardships residents were facing and what impact that would have in our community. There were a lot of unknowns, but we had to hit the ground running to best serve the residents of Milltown. So my first year on council in 2020, my primary focus was about stabilizing the town's finances. I made sure that the audit was brought up to date to produce a working budget that made sense given the unknown uncertainties. We needed to ensure that all borough services like garbage collection, repairs, et cetera, continue without any disruption. We made communication a critical component of our leadership to keep all the residents as informed as possible. We also reached out to the state and county to discuss and take advantage of grant opportunities. In August of 21, we began to hold open public meetings again and continued to stabilize the town's finances. And this year we produced a capital expenditure plan that brought back some programs for recreation, brought back some milling and paving of streets, which is something that had been neglected for the past several years, as well as for several other needed improvements. We settled our blue collar and office staff contracts, and we did this all while keeping the municipal tax increases to a minimum. I can't predict what the future holds, But for the first time, as long as I can remember, this town has a plan on how to move forward without forgetting where we came from. And if the borough, along with the support of our residents, follows the plan, which is already in process in some shape or fashion, then we can say that we're the greatest little town in the land. I'd like to say that we're all in this together because this is our town and our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zambrano. Mr. Collins, your opening statement.
Thank you. Thank you, Craig. Good evening. My name is John Collins, and I'd like to thank everyone for listening to tonight's candidate forum. I'm running for town council, for a seat on the Milltown Borough Council. Volunteerism is a key to our community. My father taught me about volunteerism from an early start. He built the Milltown Rangers, and my uncle built the American Legion. Both were voluntary and didn't get paid. I belonged to the Milltown Rangers for 43 years, and I'm a member of the Sons of the American Legion, former junior PE football coach, and an honorary member of the Milltown Fire Department. I had previously served on council from 2006 to 2009, and I served in 4 different committees: environmental, health and social service, public works, finance, and public safety. I've talked to many residents on the street, and they've about their concerns of the infrastructure, the taxes, the street maintenance, the electric rates, the water quality, the vacant stores on Main Street, and the parks, just to name a few. I believe that if we work together and have the residents' input, we can make the improvements all overdue. If elected, one of my first priorities will be the flooding situation that exists in Milltown. Other priorities would be water quality, vacant buildings on Main Street, crosswalk improvements, removing the old public works building and making a new park in a place where people can launch their kayaks and another small water trip. I believe that Gary and myself have a lot of new ideas and can help represent the residents of Milltown, and will make listening to the residents top priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Ms. Payne, your opening statement.
Thank you, Fred. Hello, my name is Pat Payne, and I am so grateful to be at tonight's Candidates Public Forum and to introduce myself to you, the viewers, and to answer questions as a Democratic candidate running for Milltown Borough Council. I am privileged to have lived in the greatest little town in the county for the last 23 years and feel so fortunate to have raised my 2 sons, Danny and Tommy, here. I am a new candidate running for council, and I've really enjoyed walking door to door with my fellow running mate, Council President Phil Zambrana, talking and listening to your concerns, hearing your suggestions as to how I can best serve the citizens of Milltown. All citizens, young people, our seniors, families, and neighbors, you have been so generous with your time to take a few minutes to talk with Phil and I as we venture around town. If I haven't been to your house, it's not intentional, and we try to cover as much ground as we can as the election is fast approaching. Campaigning is hard work, but I'm really enjoying it and learning so much from all of you during our visits. One of the things I'd like to bring as a new council member is more opportunities of that kind of small town discussion. I want to not only hear your concerns, but involve you in the solution. So many of you shared great ideas on how you are willing to participate in the solution and not be part of the problem. So many people in our town are willing to take spirited community action, and that's exactly the kind of willingness and commitment I promise to deliver to you. You have further confirmed my commitment to running for Milltown Borough Council. I am confident if elected, I will be joining a very strong team with the current mayor and council representatives. In the last 3 years, I have seen a nominal increase in my taxes, relieving me as a homeowner of an increasing municipal tax. At the same time, while other state and federal taxes increase, we get a great return on our investment in our little town. And keeping taxes stable is just short of a miracle in these financial times. I know that takes a lot of planning, long hours of hard work, and real commitment to reach consensus to achieve a reachable goal. I have been attending Borough Council meetings regularly, and I see the hard work, enthusiasm, and dedication that each member of the council and the mayor bring to the table. I watched our town officials and our borough employees, including the police and DPW workers, our volunteer firefighters, and our rescue squad, literally weather the COVID storm. And our town successfully survived a global pandemic at the same time communities our size were falling apart. Yes, tragically, we lost residents, but amidst all of that, the spirit of community was thriving, and we came together as a community to help one another at a time when there were so many unknowns and nothing was predictable. Milltown is our town and our future. And if I'm elected, I promise to be of service to all the residents of the greatest little town in the county.
Thank you. Mr. Poznansky, your opening statement.
Thank everyone here and everyone at home. A little about myself. I attended Rutgers University, majored in English and history, and a career, 20 plus years in home improvement, 10 years operation manager at 10%. And I'm semi-retired. I'm currently a docent lecturer at a site in Kingston. It's called Rockingham. It's the last wartime headquarters of George Washington, and it's a very interesting place if anyone ever chooses to go there. I'd also like to say, I'm not going to read this word for word. I'll just tell you about it. My wife grew up in North Brunswick, and she had a grandmother that lived in Milltown. She lived to be 101 and a half. And my wife and I lived in South Brunswick. We had a young son. I have a young son. He's 25 years old. We're looking for a place for permanence, and my wife had thought of Milltown. At the time, I'd come to Milltown, no offense, but I just thought it was a place, nothing really happened. But we moved here in 2000, and I realized it was more like Mayberry than a adult town, and I always appreciated that. The small town charm, and it's been a wonderful place to raise a child, and it's a wonderful place to stay because so many people don't leave Milltown. There's kind of like rubber banding on people, and it keeps bringing them back, and it's a wonderful thing. I also do believe in community service and volunteerism. I coached Little League for 10 plus years as a coach, manager. I ran fall ball for a time. I was on the baseball board. I also had 10 years plus in Milltown rec basketball, and I even had a small travel team. We had a get-together with Highland Park. They loved Milltown so much they wanted us to stay involved even when rec was no longer for the season. And I was also a Cub Scout leader for a few years, and I also taught CCD at related boards. And I feel like I'd like to be a part of the continuance of the beauty and the small townism of Milltown. I volunteer for a lot of things, and that's the way I look at being on the town council. I don't see it as partisanship on my part. I would just like another job to do and just be a help and be an inspiration, I would hope, to younger people to get on board and also help their town and be a part of the town, and be a part of the solution, not part of the problem. And that's it.
Thank you. We are now joined by Dawn Miller from Tap Into Milltown and Spotswood, who will ask a series of questions, but one at a time, of course. The first will be to Mr. Collins, followed by Ms. Payne, Mr. Poznansky, and Mr. Zambrana.
Excuse me 1 second. Gary, hold the mic a little closer to you if you can. Just push it to you. No, you didn't hit the switch. Don't touch it.
It's on. It's
Yeah, I know. I want to make sure you're on. Okay, good. Thank you.
Ms. Miller.
Good. What do you feel are important issues currently impacting the borough?
Well, our infrastructure is failing. I mean, there's so many infrastructure repairs that we have to do right now, and we need a long list of, a lot of residents said they would give me a list of their ideas for Milltown. We also have the flooding problem, which should have been resolved, but we just keep putting it away until the next hurricane, which there might be one coming up soon. And Ford Avenue is definitely an issue that has cost this town millions of dollars, and we're looking at a pile of rocks over there. So I think, maybe we should just throw the towel in on that right now because we're not getting anywhere. The other issues are traffic, water quality. Our quality of water is, the residents complain they get dirty water all the time, and, we're paying higher rates right now for water. And people ran on for office last 3 years ago, and they said the price of water was going down. I know it's 10 minutes, 10 seconds. The price of water was going down. The price of water is the same as it was when it was increased 3 years ago, and people are complaining about the price of water also.
Thank you. Ms. Payne.
Oh, thank you. Could you just repeat the question?
Sure. What do you feel are important issues? What do you feel are important issues currently impacting the borough?
Okay, thank you. You know, every small town, or every town, right, has infrastructure issues. And I have seen nothing but improvements in all those areas, and particularly in the last 3 years, but definitely in the last 6 years. One of the things that I've noticed is an active program with regard to the water issues. I know that DPW has been to, my street and are working quite hard, and I know that there's a $1 million paving program in place. And so my electric has never gone out since the new substation was constructed. My water rates are holding stable, and like I said in my opening statement, we're financially secure, and we're financially secure because of the hard work of this current council and mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Poznanski.
Sure. I'd like to focus on Ford Avenue as what I think is a problem. It's been over 20 years that there's been litigation with Ford Avenue, and there doesn't seem to be a time when the situation will come to an end, and it continues on. And I know a lot of people in town, a lot of people have talked to me about the situation and would like to find out when there'll be resolution. And they're disappointed when there doesn't seem to be an answer. And there may be an enemy to the town, whether it's Berger or I, but there doesn't seem to be any resolve coming. And that's what I'll focus on right now.
Thank you. Mr. Zambrano.
Dawn, can you please repeat that question?
Sure. What do you feel are important issues currently impacting the borough?
So what I would say as Pat and I walk around town and talk to residents is the revitalization or the rehabilitation of South Main Street. Lots of folks have commented on the empty lots, just the rundown, decaying, bad-looking feel of South Main. And so this council has started to do something about that. Just last night, we passed a resolution to sort of move forward with, we actually asked for a study to be put together to look at the entire area from Coulthard down to Washington Avenue to see what kind of options that we could do. The easiest thing would be to do nothing. Nothing has happened for the last several years, but we've got a plan in place, which will now go to the planning board, and hopefully we'll have some ideas that have come back that will be shared with the community. So that's what we've been hearing as we've been walking around town.
Thank you. Next question.
Next question. What do you hope to accomplish as a member of the Milltown Borough Council?
And that's to Ms. Payne first.
Thank you.
Poznanski.
I'll begin my service if I'm elected really in that learning mode, and trying to, determine what the residents are really seeking, from a local council member. One of the things that I have heard during our canvassing, is what Phil referred to, and I'm calling a beautification initiative. I think our this town, we have great parks and baseball fields, and this Main Street has so much potential. And I was at the meeting last night, and I listened to the rehabilitation plan, and I was really impressed. And it is an action. It's not just a thought. It's an action taken by this council. And I really appreciate that, and I'm looking forward to joining them in taking those kinds of actions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Poznanski.
Sure. I'd like to focus on Main Street also, beautification. I actually went to Metuchen, and I took pictures. I spoke to quite a few shopkeepers, and they're all proud of their town for the way it looks, the way it's risen. And I'd like to think that we can do that here. There seems to be a problem with some of the people that I do know that own stores or shops here, and I don't find the pride. I'm not sure where it starts. You can go along Main Street, and I think I had brought up at one time at a council meeting, when people think that say the council doesn't care, and I know they do care, but when they think you don't care, they tend not to care. And when there's a problem with some of the rental problems, some of the rental properties, people come here and they see disarray, and they tend to live their lives the same way. They don't think anyone cares. They don't tend to care either. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Zambrano.
So, Dawn, could you repeat that question just one more time?
What do you hope to accomplish as a member of the Milltown Borough Council?
I'm going to continue to do what I've been doing for the last 3 years, is basically trying to move the town forward, not forgetting about where we came from. So also trying to reinstitute and put things into place, some of which have already started and will continue, to take care of our parks and our recreation facilities, to make sure that they're brought up to spec, to renew them. It's very important that the kids have a safe place to go to. But literally, resurfacing, milling and paving of roads, just making sure that, again, we continue on the path that was started, and that we continue down that path to make sure that we make more improvements as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, Mr. Collins.
Yes, it was, what do I intend to improve?
What do you hope to accomplish as a member of the Milltown Borough Council?
Well, I've been a resident for 34 years, and I have a bachelor's in accounting, so, I know what the priorities should be, and, we always have a lack of money in this town. So, we should be applying for extra grants, and I don't understand, I'd like to get the flood situation done, but like my running mate Gary said, Mayor Cahill is in charge of the Fort Avenue Committee. Shouldn't we get him his approval to put a gate valve over here at the dam so we can release the water so we don't have the flooding? I mean, that's common sense. I mean, nobody has to tell you that, and there's loads of ex-councilmen on that committee. I intend to, make a park over here. We're complaining about Main Street. You lead by example. If our yard looks like a dump, what is Main Street gonna look like? The people realize that the politicians don't care about their own property, so why should I care about mine? So we should make a park over here for the people.
Thank you. The next question will first go to Mr. Poznanski.
An online petition has been recently reopened to preserve the borough's water tower and smokestack. What are your feelings regarding the importance of preserving these structures?
Well, I think it's important, but to the extent that we don't know the deterioration necessarily of the structures. So it can be fanciful for somebody who doesn't really understand and likes how it looks, but it goes deeper than that. So you need to investigate the property, you need to investigate the structure, feasibility of keeping it there, keeping it long range. It can be looked into. That's where I'm at.
Thank you. Mr. Zambrano, then Mr. Collins.
So the smokestack and water tower, I understand have been referred to as iconic in this town. Unfortunately, I've walked that ground. I've walked the grounds of Fort Avenue. They're not in very good shape. They're probably a safety hazard at this point. But the biggest issue is that the borough has no control over that property. Until that property is sold and whoever assumes the ownership of that property will make a decision as what goes there. You actually cannot make, you can actually suggest that those structures be kept, but there's nothing legal that can make you make those that owner keep that property, keep that smokestack, keep that water tower, without getting into any additional conversations about what's in the water tower or what's in the smokestack.
Thank you. Mr. Collins.
I'd like to keep them both. I think, it is Mr. Berger's property or his company's property.
It's been the subject of a lot of discussion. I'm certainly no expert in historic preservation, and I like the concept, and I love the mill, and so that was a tremendous project, and brought so much value to our town. I was speaking before about a beautification initiative, and I think that, historic preservation can certainly be a part of that. I love going to a small town like Metuchen and see the murals on the walls and storefronts, creatively designed. And I think there's all kinds of things that we can do in addition to preserving historic buildings that can add a lot of value to our town.
Thank you. Ms. Miller's next question will go to Mr. Zambrano first, then Mr. Collins.
Do you think Milltown's business district is healthy and successful? If not, what would you do to change that?
I think the business district in Milltown can be much more improved. And I think that one of the ways that can be improved is by looking at, just like we're looking right now, at the rehabilitation of the area from Cooltown down to Washington. I think eventually, when Ford Avenue eventually is broken ground and there are storefronts on Ford Avenue, because that is the plan, that will actually invigorate everything from Coulthal down to Washington, along Ford Avenue, and I think it'll even spread down past Boream as you go down to North Brunswick.
Thank you. Mr. Collins.
Thanks, Fred. The business district isn't healthy. When I was on council, we talked to the businesses, and they came here about the electrical rates, and they said probably 80 to 90% of the businesses are hobbies in Milltown at one time. But right now, they can't afford to stay here. We've lost 3 major businesses in the last year. I mean, people say, well, Metuchen, but Metuchen has a rail line. We do not have a rail line in Milltown, so we're not going to be like Metuchen. What we have to do is find out what's hurting the businesses, and when you talk to the businesses, they say the electric surcharge is terrible. We're getting killed by it. I've belonged to the Muscle Mill, I've talked to the owner, and they say, they'll tell us, you know, we had to cut our square footage in half because the electric rates are too high. I even talked to the old owner of, I forgot the restaurant. Can't believe it. But he was over, Frank was over on Riders Lane and Tomato Factory. And he said to me, he says, John, I gotta move out. I can't afford the electric rates here. He says,
Thank you.
it's too high.
Ms. Payne.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Do you think Milltown's business district is healthy and successful? If not, what would you do to change that?
So that's a great question, because the heart of any small town is its main street, right? And that's what, attracted me growing up in Edison and coming to Milltown for the fireworks. This was always a place that I thought about living in the future. I think that you have to be willing as a community to attract businesses. I think we need to have an active Chamber of Commerce. I think we need to have active community participation. And that's how businesses, will be drawn to our town. I think small businesses suffered a great deal as a result of COVID, and some of them just couldn't recover. But that doesn't mean that we can't keep the avenues open to lure in, businesses into this town. And the businesses that are here and did survive COVID, they're doing great. And we have as much responsibility as a council and as members, living residents of the town, to come together and support new businesses.
Thank you. Mr. Poznanski.
I think with COVID that a lot of businesses did suffer. I think a lot of them are fairly healthy. The ones that survived are fairly healthy now, but the surcharges are having an effect. I also belong to the Muscle Mill, and there are other businesses that I know, and they tell me that they're doing well. They get people to come in, or they have people that are buying, but they're being hurt by the surcharges. And some of them have asked if I got on, if I could do something about that, which I won't promise. But that is part of the problem.
Thank you. Ms. Miller's next question will go to Mr. Collins first, then Ms. Payne.
What are some of your favorite things about Milltown?
Oh, the people, the volunteerism. I really miss the hot dogs and the beer we used to have years ago. Everybody could talk and find out, who's who, what, you were doing, if you were in the rescue squad or the fire department or, the Little League, everybody used to know it. But right now, after the parade, we didn't even have hot dogs this year, so there's nobody getting together. I just love the 4th of July parade, though. I've been coming to it since like 1961. And I love the parade. I love the people here, the volunteers, and my neighbors. I have great neighbors. I really like, my area. And it's a diverse community, and we just, we all work hard here to volunteer. I mean, it's like, the people wear a lot of different hats in this town. And it's a nice, quiet town. We call the police come there within a minute. It's a great place to live. I mean, you walk down the path, the nature trail. That was a great, path they made. I really like that. I bike it, I walk it. It's really nice. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Payne.
So I love that question, and I expected that kind of question, living in a place like Milltown. And how I got here was so interesting, right? So I was living in Edison and getting my hair done by a hairdresser who lives on my street where I now live, right? So there was a connection that long ago, and that's how I landed here. What do I like about it? When Phil and I are walking around town, and we're talking with people, the opportunity to be able to canvass and go door to door, it's an amazing thing to talk to people that, maybe I just wave at, on the street or meet people that I've never talked to before. And they share their stories about how they love this town. And that's why I love being a resident of Milltown.
Thank you. Mr. Poznanski.
Sure. I love this town also. To me, I feel like it's an oasis. I have no enemies here. I think anyone's a friend, even if you're just a casual acquaintance. They're your friend, because we all have something in common we all share. For some people, there's no reason to leave the town. You have, I think there are about 20 hairstylists or hairdressers, businesses in town. It's just, it's a great place to be, and once you're here, you're part of a family. A lot of it is with talking about volunteerism, with baseball, basketball. I still remember when my wife asked the first time when my son was 4 if I wanted to be a coach, and I said, yeah, just check me off. But it was the beginning of a wonderful life here for myself, my family, being a part, sure, and being a part of it all, and just being able to sit up here tonight. If I didn't start with Little League, I wouldn't be here tonight. I would just be somebody sitting on a couch watching the Mets tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Zambrana.
So the signs that are posted coming in and out of Milltown say, "Welcome to a friendly community." And when I first started coming here, I've lived here for 17 years, but I've been coming here for like close to 30 because my father-in-law lived here, and we would always visit with the kids. And I was so taken aback by the fact that how friendly everyone was. I'm originally from New York. People just don't say hi to you as you walk by them on the street. Everyone in Milltown seems to do that. And that becomes actually infectious. You end up doing it yourself. Even when you go back to Queens, you're actually saying hello to people that you never would have before, because that's just what this town, does to you. Safe town, great place to raise kids, and as Pat and I walk around and we ask, one of my questions is, so how long have you been here and why'd you move here? It's the same exact reason. Great place to raise kids, great people, wouldn't want to live anywhere else.
Thank you. Ms. Miller's next question will first go to Ms. Payne, then Mr. Poznanski. That's it?
I have one more.
The final question from Ms. Miller, for Ms. Payne first.
If the borough received a $2 million grant to use any way you wanted, what would you do? What would you use it for and why?
A cruise around the world? No. I'm just kidding. A $2 million grant. Coming to attending the borough council meetings, I've seen, so many grants being so well spent. $2 million, my goodness. Well, to your question about how do we improve Main Street and how do we lure small businesses to our town, I think that, if any part of a grant, I don't have too much experience with grants. Where I work, someone else gets grants, and then we spend that money. I would love to see that beautification initiative take place. The empty spots, like throw that $2 million in that rehabilitation planning, turn that rehabilitation plan into a redevelopment plan, and let's start building. That's what I would do with the $2 million.
Thank you. Mr. Poznanski.
Sure. It would be great to get that money. I think I'd spread it around. I would think of helping the police. I'd have, for the sports in town, boys and girls, there would be no fee for whatever they did. And I'd also like to beautify Main Street in a lot of different ways. And if I had a little more money, I'd like to buy the Ford Avenue plot and turn it into a county park.
Thank you. Mr. Zambrana.
So if I could take that $2 million and break it apart in pieces, I'd probably give a little bit to everyone, because I would hate just to have to give it to one particular department or one section of town. Probably, as I agree with Mr. Poznanski and Ms. Payne, if I could use that money, I would probably use it some way to incentivize the rehabilitation of South Main Street. Again, because I think it's key that gets done. Again, that process has started. I think once that happens, and again, along with Ford Avenue, downtown Main Street and downtown Milltown, all small business will come flocking to Milltown.
Thank you, Mr. Collins.
Oh, I talk to people on the street, they're always like, pave my road, you know? So, and I split it up, like Mr. Zambrana said, into different areas and, you know, see what is the main areas we have to go by. I would say I'd make a new park out here in back of the Municipal building instead of leaving it like a, I don't know, junkyard as it is now, and so people can use it as a park. I'd pave more streets, and I'd try to make some more improvements on the water and some of the parks I would do improvements on also. And we finally are getting some improvements in the park. We waited all year, and now they're doing some improvements in the park. They put a new roof on the gazebos over on Albert Avenue, and they paved the basketball court. So that's what we should have been doing all along, but you know, now's the fall. It's a little late to start, you know, construction, but I'd still, and I'd ask people what they want to do with it also, because the residents' input is very important, and I really feel sometimes people become apathetic and they don't realize that some people care on the council and want to hear from them.
Thank you. This concludes the reporter section of the candidates forum. Thank you, Ms. Miller, for your questions. We now turn to previously submitted public questions, which I have here, and I will read a selection of. Ms. Miller covered a couple of the questions that were submitted, so these are edited for length and clarity. The first question to Mr. Poznanski is, what way do you plan on addressing street design within the borough to create safer transit corridors for pedestrians and bicycles?
I think that this situation as it is well attended. I think that it's very safe. I don't know that there's anything else that needs to be done. I know that on the, especially main streets, the corners where they have the construction, so it's the non-slip surfaces, and across right up here where they have the flashing lights by the diner, by the Dunkin' Donuts. I think that was a wonderful addition, although some people do seem to ignore the lights. I think with that, and I think the police coordination, I think the streets are wonderfully done. Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Zambrana.
Could you repeat that question one more time, Fred?
The question reads, what way do you plan on addressing street design within the borough to create a safer transit corridors for pedestrians and bicycles?
So I consider Milltown a walking town. It just depends if you like to walk or not. We did receive a $250,000 bike, a grant for a bike path, so that's sort of already in the works in the planning stages. I don't really know how that's going to address how bikes are going to come in and around, but I would hope that it would already take advantage of the paths that are already there. Cut through Mill Pond in some way and get to the other side by the Rangers so you can get from one side of town to the other. Main Street itself, again, you could do just like the gentleman just said about additional street lights, flashing lights to help people cross the street. But other than that, there's not really much else you could do.
Thank you. Mr. Collins.
Yeah, I put, like what Touching has, they have lights embedded in the road so people can see, because the one up here on Main Street, they're on top of you and they don't see it because there's a sign of the building. But if you put the lights in the pavement, it might help. That's what Touching does. I'd also repaint most of the crosswalks because they get worn down by the cars, and I try to make them more visible because the one on Albert Avenue is terrible. You walk out there, you have to hear the car before it comes because you can't see around it. And a lot of children cross there to go to school. So I would clear the visibility, I would repaint the walks, and I try putting the lights in the pavement if we could. You know, I'd contact the police, see what they see about it, and maybe even some speed, what do they call those?
Speed bumps?
Yeah, they're not bumps, they're tape. They have like a speed tape. They used to have them in Newark, and they tape them onto the road, and it makes your tires vibrate once you go too fast. So, but we could try doing that in some spots where the crosswalks are too. That's another idea.
Thank you. Ms. Payne.
Wow, this is a very interesting and tough question. Safer transit corridor and street design. That's sort of out of my area of expertise. You know, and if an issue comes like this to the council, if I should be so lucky to be elected, you know, my suggestion would always be, let's talk to the experts. Let's talk to urban planners. Let's talk to law enforcement. I know that some of the roads in our county, or in our town, the county has control over, so we would have to consult with our county partners. You know, and so I think it's really important that, you know, if I don't know something, I'm going to make sure that I find out and get more information and tap into the experts and take their advice.
Thank you. The next question will go to Mr. Zambrana, then Mr. Collins first. If elected, will you support park improvements?
So I've already supported park improvements because as part of the capital expenditure plan that was already passed this year, and as Mr. Collins already alluded to, there's new roofs that went on at the gazebos down at Albert Avenue. The basketball court at Albert Avenue has been repaved and will be restriped. We're actually working on a pickleball court in a part of Michelin Park. Can you imagine that? A pickleball park that probably a town in East Brunswick, which is I don't know how many times bigger than Milltown, probably doesn't have, but Milltown will. Again, just won't even get into the girls' softball lights because that's already a thing. It's already a done deal. It's been mentioned before, but it's already in progress, and I think it's important to reiterate that and bring that to the residents' attention because there has been action that's already been taking place.
Thank you. Mr. Collins.
Yes, I'm in favor of park improvements. There's so much to be done in the parks. They've been let down so bad. I mean, I talked to residents last year over at Michelin Park, and they said, look at this, my kids can't even go play basketball, but I graduated Phil, they finally got it done this year. And there's a lot of improvements that have to be done in the parks. We lost a swing set down at Albert Avenue. Some of the other fields, you know, need to be redone. We, you know, went through a tough summer with the drought. There's a lot of bare spots, there's a lot of dead trees that have to be taken out. But as for me, you know, I go to the park every day, I walk my dog by there, and I bring my scooper, and me and my friend Dave Niskis, we clean up the park ourselves, because it's not done by anybody else, and we don't like to see dirty parks. We like to see clean parks. And I would, you know, prioritize this, and even put a new park over here.
Thank you. Ms. Payne.
Park improvements. I have a great park story that I want to share. When I first moved here, I brought my sons to all the parks. I mean, this again, another feature of this town is the bigger parks, the pocket parks, so I had just moved in, and I brought my younger son Tom to the yellow park. That's what we used to call the yellow park at Parkview, and then the purple park over by the pool. And that's where I met Dave Potter, who's my neighbor and a council member, current council member. And our kids met, Tommy and Courtney met at the yellow park 20 years ago, and they remain best friends today. Park improvements, I think we have great parks. I think that park maintenance is critical, and I think this council does a wonderful job maintaining those parks for everyone.
Thank you. Mr. Poznanski.
I believe in park improvements when they're needed, and at times they are needed. And I think that the problems, especially coming from the council, are addressed. There are, I know there's situations with some of the equipment. I had spoken to Ralph, who's head of the DPW, and what he was saying as far as when a piece breaks, you can't, on certain things, you can't just replace the part. You have to replace the whole system, which can be expensive. But also, what I had thought is the borough property here, where the old municipal DPW is, would be a good place for a park, and maybe that could be looked into as a possibility for the future, and a possibility of some kind of a civic center for the kids, so they don't get in trouble when they're outside. They have an inside place where it could be safe and secure.
Thank you.
Sure.
The next question will go to Mr. Collins first and Ms. Payne. How would you define sustainability, and how does it apply to municipal government?
Just sustainability, as the word facility?
The way the question's asked.
Well, that's a broad question. I've always favored sustainability as getting solar panels for the garage and municipal buildings so we can reduce our cost of electricity and we won't burn as much fuel and we can get free electricity. They say Tesla's giving out free panels. I don't know why nobody on this council has ever looked into this. I don't understand it. Our water situation, sustainable? We really need to look at the quality of our water right now. It's not very appetizing, how's that? And also we have to look at our sewer system. Our sewer system is backing up too. You know, the guys are remarkable down here in Public Works because they have all these problems they have to deal with. And they have a limited amount of labor. So, yeah, I guess that's what I would have for sustainability.
Thank you. Ms. Payne.
Sustainability, you know, energy. Again, this is an area that we have citizen involvement. There's an environmental commission that, you know, are citizens that have a great deal of expertise with regard to these kinds of issues. That's who I would talk to, you know, about those particular issues and get their advice and get their input.
Thank you. Mr. Poznanski.
Sure. Sustainability, it's to go into what John was talking about. I know they've done a lot of replacing of water sewer pipes around town. It's a huge project, which I can appreciate. And also I know there are environmental groups in town. There's a vast amount of knowledge there with some of the members, and I know they coordinate with council, and they can keep coordinating with council, and it would be appreciated. I'm not sure where else to go with that right now.
Thank you. Mr. Zambrano.
So sustainability is it's a broad question. Again, what I would do, just as Pat alluded to, we already have an environmental commission in town with subject matter experts who are connected to folks in different universities and different companies. We take their advice. I always have. I've actually been a member of the environmental commission in the past. Great folks who know a lot. Whether it's about composting, whether it's about electricity, whether it's about LED, anything, that's what I would do. That's why that committee is there, to give advice and guidance to the council.
Thank you. This next question is from a different source, but on a similar theme. It first goes to Mr. Collins, then Ms. Payne. How would you on council support and encourage renewable energy generation in the borough?
Well, like I said, I would go for solar panels. I'd also try to get maybe some natural gas vehicles in the Public Works Department if they were feasible. I'm sure we'd have to get a grant for it because, you know, we don't have the funds right now to buy new vehicles at the prices they are at, and also the supply. But could you repeat that question again?
How would you on council support and encourage renewable energy generation in the borough?
Yes, I would go with solar panels right now because that's what we have a chance to go for no cost, and I would say that would be the best bet we could do right now to make a sustainable utilities.
Thank you. Ms. Payne.
That question is very similar to the question before, as you mentioned, Fred. I don't really have anything else to add other than the same thing that Phil said, is that I would ask the experts for their advice. And as a member of the council, I would be very willing to do that on issues that I don't know a whole lot about. And I don't know a whole lot about renewable energy generation, but I would rely on people that do.
Mr. Poznanski.
I feel the same as everyone else has spoken. I do believe in the solar panels. I know that they're a help. Natural gas vehicles, and also, like Pat said, there are experts in the field, and you could have them come and explain everything that they would advise to do.
Thank you. Mr. Zambrano.
So you might want to take baby steps when it comes to renewable energy, and by that I mean, as Mr. Collins said, maybe you outfit a truck in a DPW or a police car somehow, some sort of borough vehicle as an EV vehicle. just to see how it would go, and then you would go from there. Solar panels, it's a great idea. I don't know if like most of this town understands that when you're talking about electricity, that you might have to cut down trees in order to actually put solar panels up on your house. You actually might have to replace your roof in order to put solar panels up. I've looked at it. I didn't want to cut down 200-year trees, and I didn't want to replace my roof. But again, baby steps. Take the advice of the Environmental Commission as advice, look at subject matter experts and go that way.
Thank you. The next question will go to Mr. Collins first. Or was the previous question to you first?
That was you. You were first. Was that first?
Yeah, all right. The next question will go to Ms. Payne first, and then Mr. Poznanski. A little bit longer. A few years back, water and sewer rates were increased 30% to make up a $300,000 budget deficit in 6 months. The borough now sits on a $625,000 surplus for this account. With this knowledge, if elected, what action would you take regarding water sewer rates?
So, that's a good question. You know, as a resident, and I'm sure the same as every resident, that I would love for my water bill to go down and my sewer rates to go down, and I'd love for my taxes to go down, and I'd like for my grocery costs to go down and my car insurance payment to go down. That would be ideal. I happen to think that our water and sewer rates are very competitive with other towns. Water and sewer is expensive, and I am willing to pay whatever it costs in order to have a safe water system that we have here in Milltown and a good sewer system.
Thank you.
Mr. Poznanski.
I think you reduce the rates on the citizens because you can look at it in a sense as an overpayment, and the savings should go back to the people. I don't feel that the rates are fair if they can be lower, and I don't want to pay the extra. That's where I'm at.
Thank you. Mr. Zambrano.
You repeat that question again, Fred?
A few years back, water and sewer rates were increased 30% to make up a $300,000 budget deficit in 6 months. The borough now sits on a $625,000 in surplus for this account. With this knowledge, if elected, what action would you take regarding water sewer rates?
So so what I will say about water and sewer rates is that they have remained at the same rate that they were the last 3 years, so basically unchanged. Why those water and sewer rates were actually increased at that time is a very good question. One that I don't think we're going to have the best answer 3 years later. Water and sewer, what you have to remember is, although you may have a surplus right now, is you should always keep money on hand for that rainy day. We do have a couple of issues around town right now where we're investigating breaks in lines that aren't going to be, they're going to be much more to fix those or to resolve those issues than what is in the surplus right now. So that's what I would say is, you know, you have to make sure that, that you don't have to raise them any higher than they already are, but that's not the plan at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Collins.
Yes, we always have a surplus. You're supposed to keep a surplus in the water and sewer accounts, but it seems to be raised by certain individuals when they get financed. Now we got a $675,000 surplus. I give it back to the people, lower the rates. There's no reason $675,000 in the water and sewer account that you can't lower the rates. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, right now everybody's hurting with inflation. I mean, they could use a break. Our taxes are going up this year. The water rates are high, the electric rate's high, our gasoline prices, the food prices. Give the people a break. I mean, you know, somewhere at least $675,000. It's absurd. People are paying for it. Go back, check their bills, reduce the rates. There's no reason you have a $675,000 surplus. If you have a major sewer improvement, you bond for it. I don't understand why you wouldn't give this back to the people or the ratepayers. You should lower the rates.
Thank you. The next question is for Mr. Poznanski. It reads, briefly describe your understanding of the environmental justice law in New Jersey and its effect on borough residents.
Can you say that again?
Briefly describe your understanding of the environmental justice law in New Jersey and its effect on borough residents.
I'm not quite familiar with it. Can you explain to me?
I do not have an explanation. This is how the question was submitted.
Okay. I guess I don't have an answer.
All right. Mr. Zambrano.
That's a very interesting question, environmental justice. All that I could say about environmental justice, again, is that folks in town who are not, who are actually being harmed in some way by something environmentally, we should do something to make sure that is rectified. And again, I would probably go to my environmental commission folks for guidance, and again, to anytime I don't know the details on something, I would actually look that up, make sure I become well-versed in it, and move on.
I have a question. The person that wrote that question, are they sitting here tonight?
I don't know.
Because I'd appreciate it if someone would explain that.
It's a submitted question, and that's all that it stands as it was submitted. Mr. Collins.
Yes, I've always had, I don't know a lot about the environmental justice law, but I do know we have a real problem in this state. We go after people who dump chemicals in the property and sue them all the time, but people who would endanger the species, endangered species, and are trading them in markets should be treated the same. They should get fined for remediation, just like the chemical dumpers. If you take a species like a turtle, or something's endangered, and you take it out of the environment, you should pay to remediate the species, not pay a measly fine and they dump it into the state budget. We should go in and ask that the people that are making money and harvesting these endangered species pay for remediation of that species, because we're never going to stop it unless we do this. It's absurd that people are making a lot of money trading these endangered species, and we all suffer by it. They should be paid to remediate the species, like the chemical factories and the air, they pollute in the air and the soil. You give them money, instead of putting it in the state budget, they should remediate the species.
Thank you. Ms. Payne.
So I am a trained attorney, and the only way that I could really comment on an environmental justice law is if I actually had the statute and I could read it and then probably try to interpret it. So I can't really speak about a law that I haven't read and I don't know anything about.
Thank you. The final submitted question reads as follows, and it goes to Mr. Zambrano first, then Mr. Collins. What will you do to keep taxes and utility rates as low as possible while maintaining the highest possible, quality of services in town? I'm going to interpret that. What will you do to keep taxes and utility rates as low as possible while maintaining the highest possible quality of services in town?
So keeping taxes low as possible and water and sewer rates as low as possible is basically means don't raise them. And again, as I mentioned, I mentioned this earlier tonight, the taxes in town, municipal taxes, and one thing that you must remember is that when you're looking at your tax pie, the municipal part of that pie is only about 20%. The rest of it is school, county, library board, et cetera. The taxes rates have been minimal in the last 3 years. Water and sewer rates have not gone up in the last 3 years. And that plan has been in place. It's a good plan. We continue to hold to that plan to make sure that those increases are kept to a minimum, especially with what's going on everywhere else, as Mr. Collins said, with gas and food, et cetera.
Thank you. Mr. Collins.
Yeah, I try to keep taxes down as low as possible. I mean, there's certain points of, the quality of life issues. We need our roads paved also. And, I hear this, that, well, they only went up 2%. Well, that department, we get 2%, the county gets a 5%, and the Board of Ed gets, who knows? My taxes go up $400 to $500 a year. I don't see when they're telling me it's going up $30. I know it's a bunch of BS, and you do too. We all know this. That's not true. You look at your tax bill. You put it next to one side. They get more and more and more every year. My house, they started there 10 years ago, and now I'm paying almost $5,000 more. It's like $400 or $500 a year. We have to do something with, and the Board of Ed takes an enormous amount of our taxes. So we have to keep the taxes lower, and we should look into shared services. We should look into generating our own electricity with putting solar panels on here. There's a ton of things we can do, and we can get some input from the residents, which we don't seem to get. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Payne.
I'd like to speak directly to Mr. Collins' comments about municipal taxes going up $400 or $500 every year. That's simply not true. I'm looking forward to joining this mayor and council because of the superb financial planning that has been happening since Phil Zambrana has been on council and now is council president. When I look at my tax bill, I don't see an increase. I see a nominal $30, $40. I'm astounded. I'm astounded that taxes have not increased, and this town and this council and this mayor maintain the highest quality of services. I have no complaints. I have no complaints about any types of services that the municipality provides. And at the same time, when I look at that tax bill, I'm very grateful.
Thank you. Mr. Poznanski.
Sure. As far as tax rates, and people will ask, can you lower our taxes? There's with the pie that Phil had brought up, there's very little wiggle room. But there's a possibility of, because it's over 60%, about two-thirds go to the school system. And it would be good if there's a possibility of council and mayor speaking with Dr. Brown and working together to keep the general cost of the taxes down. As far as utility rates, I think that as far as the water rates, the possibility of lowering the water rates would be ideal, considering the overage. Again, I think to work with the Board of Ed, because that's where the major expenditure of our taxes go, and I think people need to look closer at that than necessarily the municipal to be concerned.
Thank you. This concludes the public's questions submitted. And following a 5-minute break, which will begin in a moment, we will hear closing statements in the following order. Mr. Poznanski, followed by Ms. Payne, Mr. Collins, and Mr. Zambrana. We'll now have a 5-minute break.
You guys,
I'll move to closing statement.
I have a
3 minutes.
timer. You have on you?
How much time do we have closing statement?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. Oh, we got 3 minutes. That's great.
Who said it wasn't on?
That's what Gary said, it wasn't on.
Who says it wasn't on?
The red light wasn't on.
Oh, you can probably hear him from his mic.
Yeah, I'm sure you heard it.
Welcome back to the 2022 Milltown Candidates Forum. We are now going to have closing 3-minute statements. Mr. Poznanski will start.
Sure. I'd like to say that I'm appreciative to have the opportunity to be here. It's like I said, I've been a volunteer in so many things, and I appreciate everyone listening to me. Not everything comes out the way I want it to, but it's been wonderful living in Milltown and being a part of all this. The opportunity to, I feel like being here is to be a good citizen. For most people, it's easy to stay home, watch TV, or go up to the Grove and have a drink. And I appreciate everyone here. I appreciate both sides, because it's a donation of time that you don't get back, and hopefully you get something back from it. And I hope that the citizens do appreciate what each and everyone does here. But I also want to say the part-time job that I have, it's comes from the Revolutionary War, and I'm in the middle of 7 books right now, and to know about the hardships that those people went through to build this country, to create the country, because coming from England, the reason that the English came here was to kill the Americans. It wasn't to negotiate. They saw the Americans as treasonous, and to be able to be there and to do my little bit to possibly help my little town, our little town, I appreciate so much. And I also want to say one last thing. I'm dedicating my time here, whether I get on council or not, to my father. I never had a chance. My father died over 30 years ago, and I never really had a chance to thank him. So this is for him. Thank you. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Ms. Payne.
Thanks to the viewers who are watching tonight and the residents in the audience for providing me with an opportunity to connect with you. If elected, I want to do more of that. Thank you to our media partners for asking incisive questions. A big shout out to Russ Einbinder and Milltown Cable TV, and our moderator, Fred Kamen, for coordinating and managing all that goes into a forum like this. Thank you to my fellow candidates here at the forum for a respectful and spirited conversation. I've enjoyed listening to you all. Our political positions and parties may differ, but we are all here for the same reason, to selflessly serve the residents of Milltown Borough. The 2 terms I was elected to serve on the Milltown Board of Education was 6 years of the best learning and service opportunities any resident of any town could be fortunate to experience. I am an educator, a college professor, and no teacher works harder and deserves more than those who serve our district and teach our children. They provide content subject expertise and give daily hope and care to every single student they meet in their classrooms. There are hard times on the board. I served during the largest state budget cut in the history of localized New Jersey education, and difficult and unpopular decisions had to be made. And that was another storm we weathered together to do the right things for our students. It was an interesting time for me, because where I work, I'm on the other side of the table, representing the faculty demanding more, and sometimes, as a Board of Education member, I had to ask the very opposite. What better learning opportunity could there be to be able to experience both sides? And the takeaway for me was that all voices, all views, all concerns, and all perspectives are critically important to the success of any organization. I didn't do it perfectly, but I learned from that. And if elected, I'm making a commitment to learn first, act next. On the Board of Ed, I was surrounded by the citizens of this great little town who pulled me up, and I know I'll feel the same support and generosity if elected to the Borough Council. Politics is not always easy. It can be frustrating, exhaustive, time-consuming, and solutions seemingly taking forever. At times it can seem defeating. But I'm a trained and seasoned advocate, as an attorney and as the faculty union president representing the full-time faculty at Middlesex College. Speaking the truth is not always easy, and doing the right thing can be met with adversity, but I will never give up or give in, even if the road seems incredibly bumpy. Anyone that knows me will tell you that I'm incredibly tenacious, and I'll work even harder when the end result may appear unattainable to others. My ask is simple. Elect Phil Zambrana again, and elect me, Pat Payne, for Milltown Borough Council. We are clear in our mission, and that is to serve every single resident of the greatest little town in the county. This is our town and our future.
Thank you. Mr. Collins.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone who participated in tonight's candidate forum, and thanks for all the residents for listening. I'd also like to thank our moderator, Fred Kamen, for being our moderator. I'm going to go a little off course here. Well, our tax situation here it's a Band-Aid approach. The police contract hasn't been settled in 3 years. Our public workers got a 0% increase for 1 year. We have $670,000 in the water rate that we had surplus in the waters department. We just got a $500,000 court order from Ford Avenue to pay the taxes, so now we have a surplus of funds. So this is just a Band-Aid approach on the taxes. It's always tough here. When you get up into the Borough Council, you'll find out we don't have that much money to deal with and that much money to spend. But we do our best. And this election is about choosing the path for Milltown's future. You can vote for candidates who want to listen to the professionals, or you can listen, to people who don't have all the answers and don't want to listen to the residents. And thank you and good night.
Thank you. Mr. Zambrana.
Thank you, Fred. So in closing, I'd like to thank Russ Einbinder and the Cable Television Committee for organizing and presenting tonight's forum. I'd also like to thank our moderator, Fred Kamen, and Dawn Miller from Tap Into for taking the time to be here tonight. So I said earlier, Pat and I have been walking around town, meeting with as many people, many residents as we can. And we've met with couples, with kids, families with kids in high school, JK, Parkview, kids that have graduated college, and of course the seniors. And we'll continue to reach out and catch up with as many people as we can before Election Day. During my time on council, whenever I run into someone at one of the local businesses or at the post office, I always get the same question. And the question is, hey Phil, how's that politics thing going? And without fail, I always say the same thing. My answer is, I don't really like politics, and all I want to do is get things done. I want to keep moving forward, and I want to get back to my community. No politics. The one thing that I've said many times during my 3 years on council is that I really don't care what political party you're affiliated with. I really don't care how you vote at the national level. The only party that really I'm concerned about or care about is the Milltown Party. And everyone's invited. If you want to come in and join, fine. If you don't, that's okay as well. My role as a councilman is to listen to all of the residents of the town because you all deserve a voice in how our town is doing. In my opening statement, I mentioned that I believe that I was elected because folks had faith that I would and could get things done. So I, along with my fellow council members, accomplished a few things. We kept municipal tax increases under 2% for 3 years in a row. Stable water and electric rates haven't gone up in 3 years. We've gotten over $4 million in grants for water infrastructure improvements. Imagine where we'd be if we didn't have $4 million in grants. The installation of new lights at Bradford Park became a thing. We're getting new signage at Borough Hall. We produced a capital budget that it actually funded the purchase of vehicles for the DPW, for the fire department, and the police department. We're updating the borough website. We promoted funds for upgrades to all of our borough parks. Albert Avenue Park has been resurfaced, and as Mr. Collins said earlier, new roofs are being installed as a gazebo. I also mentioned earlier that we actually have room for a pickleball court in town, and I could be wrong, but I think East Brunswick, which is a much bigger town, doesn't have one pickleball court. My goal, if re-elected as council member, will be the same, to continue on a path that I started 3 years ago, which is to keep the town fiscally sound, to continue to make financially responsible decisions. In closing, let me just say this. If you're satisfied with Councilman Phil Zambrana and what I've accomplished over the last 3 years, vote for Zambrana Payne on Election Day. Good night.
Thank you. Our thanks to each of the candidates joining us for tonight's forum, as well as Dawn Miller from Tap Into Milltown for her questions and the questions submitted by the audience and members of the public. We also thank local Milltown Access Channel Committee, Russ Einbinder, Chairman, and Jason Kahn behind the camera. This concludes the 2022 Candidate Forum. Thank you for joining us, and please join me in applause for all involved.
Thank you.
So we're gonna take some pictures.
Picture, Dawn wants a picture of everybody.
I wish you were over there 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's fine.
Dawn,